Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Editorial Edge. A new week begins, and so do we. All right. So we have three important topics, in fact. One that will be a deep dive for you. The deep dive topic is on urban wetlands. Wetlands, you will see, has been in the news. A lot of articles have been published on wetlands specifically. So we'll take an extensive look, in fact, a complete deep dive analysis on wetlands will be following in the next, say, 30 to 35 minutes. Thereafter, we'll take a look at zombie fires. In fact, we'll try and understand more about permafrost. Okay, one of the primary, say, problems that will associate with zombie fires. So we'll take a look at that too. And as usual, now that we have this question session that we always, in fact, focus on. So the question session will be following. Just give me a second. Right. Okay. Good morning, Deepak, Madhusudan, Prateek, Mandeep. Good morning, guys. Welcome. All right. So we'll take a look at the questions. The previous class questions on Saturday, we had given you around 5-6 questions. So we'll see which of you answered it correctly. And thereafter, the questions for today. We also have a mains specific question for you. So we'll take a look at that too. Hi, Joja, Arka. Good morning, guys. Welcome. All right. So if any of you haven't joined my Telegram channel so far, well, you can quickly go ahead, scan this, join my Telegram channel. And I hope to see many of you there. All right. Okay, let's begin. So straight away, we'll jump into the questions from last class, from Saturday. So many different answers came for this particular question. Now you can go ahead and answer the questions too. Today's questions, you can go ahead and answer in the comment box. And then you will see that if you get all correct, well, you get figured here. Good morning, Rajan Kumar, Asha. Good morning, guys. So the first question I had was, vector-borne diseases are caused by insects that transmit infection pathogens. Well, not just insects. Okay. We are looking at mammals also. We are looking at all sorts of vectors. It's just not arthropods, as we had discussed. So this is incorrect. Okay. All vector-borne diseases are zoonotic diseases. Now the understanding here, say zoonotic disease is something that you get when you come in, say, contact with the blood or the saliva or any sort of fluid. All right. Vector-borne diseases are transmitted to you by an agent, and that disease is caused by a particular pathogen. So it could be like a virus, a bacteria, or a parasite. All right. Good morning, Bulbul, guys. Welcome. So all vector-borne diseases are not zoonotic diseases. All aquatic snails are also not vectors, in fact. What you realize, it's only the freshwater snails. Okay. And then again, not all. Some freshwater snails are carriers of vectors of diseases. So this is also incorrect, which means all three. All three are incorrect in this. Next, go forward. Which one of the following groups of diseases is caused due to mosquito bites? Well, straight away, this was an easy one. Dengue, encephalitis, and the yellow fever. Okay. If you look at typhus, well, it's caused due to fleas and lice. Tungiasis is caused due to sand flea. All right. Ascariasis, you find it in your gut, in fact. The roundworm, So that's you'll plague it to that. The plague is due to fleas. Now, plague, many people think is due to rats. No. In fact, the vector there is fleas. Good morning, Sai Krishna. Monica, guys, welcome. All right. So the answer here is A. All right. Let's go to the next one. The term two-state solution. You must have read about it. It's a very frequently used term. Okay. Just like you have the one China policy for, say, China and Taiwan. Okay. The Falklands are for UK and Argentina. Okay. China-Taiwan is called the One China policy. Nagorno-Karabakh is between Armenia and Azerbaijan. We had done an extensive video on this also on StudyIQ English, which means this is for Israel and Palestine. All right. So the correct answer here will be D. All right. Make a note of these because these are again places that are in news. So you would be best advised to know about them. All right. Know about, say, I had asked you to go ahead and look at, say, the Israel region, the whole of Golan Plateau and everything, Golan Heights. I hope you did that because that area is always in the news and it serves you well to know about the whole geography of that place. Which one of the following countries does not share a land border with Israel? Well, Egypt does, Jordan also, Syria also, Saudi Arabia will, unfortunately, up until now, it doesn't. However, it could change, the way Saudi Arabia is quite aggressive in that region. But then again, you've had the Abraham Accords. There's a lot of peace treaties going on, a lot of normalization of relationships. So, well, we'll discuss that. So, Saudi Arabia is the answer here, which means D. All right. Let's look at the people who answered the questions correctly. In fact, Arka, Asha, Tanu, Mandeep and Karuna I first must congratulate all of you. All right, good job, well done. You might have one question answered incorrectly here or there, but please go ahead. Make it a collaborative effort. For the rest of you who are watching me live, answer today's question. Forget if you're just not motivated by getting your name here. I know that's inconsequential. Focus on the outcome-based learning. When you spend 45 minutes for a particular topic, you should be able to answer questions for that. Okay. Dream NDA. Good morning. Good morning. All right. So let's look at the first topic now, guys. Okay. I'd request all of you consider answering the questions. Some mains answers are still pending. I had thought of getting back to them by yesterday evening, but then some answers are really exhaustive. It takes time to go through them. So I'm trying to get through to all of you by this afternoon. All right. And for the rest of you, go ahead and send in your answers, send in the MCQs. It'll be a learning process for you. Okay. So let's look at wetlands now. One of the most important areas when you will study geography. Okay. Now, wetlands are also called as the kidneys of the ecosystem. Okay. In fact, you had a question earlier asked. I think it was in CDS or some examination or CAPF. Where they asked this, what are called the kidneys of the ecosystem. So you look at, say, wetlands as an extreme importance, extremely important area that you will read about. Good morning, Vipen. How are you? Welcome, guys. So what you look at is, wetland is an area between terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems. In fact, it's a transition area. Okay. So you have in geography, you'll read about core areas and transition areas. So it's like a transition area between land, terrestrial ecosystem, and the aquatic ecosystem, which means it has the interaction of both the flora, fauna of both the ecosystems in this. Okay, which is why it becomes a very critical area for us to understand. All right. Now, what you understand here is that water is the primary controlling factor. In wetlands, everything is related to the type of water it holds. Okay, first understanding. Now, it could hold fresh water. It could hold brackish water. It could also hold saline water. Okay. So from the UPSC perspective, please know that a wetland is capable of holding fresh water, brackish water, saline water. A wetland can also be natural or it can be man-made. All right. Now, once you have understood this, that these are the primary classifications that you're looking at. Okay. Understand when World Wetlands Day is concerned. Well, it's a very factual based question, Feb the 2nd. But on this particular day, the much often heard Ramsar Convention that you must have all read about, or in fact be aware about, well, this came into force. And in terms of, say, India and Ramsar Convention, you find that the numbers, the sites under Ramsar Convention, which are to be, say, protected as wetlands of importance, that number is going up. As of late, in fact, the latest update is we have around 75 Ramsar sites in India, which means that there is a lot of focus on their conservation and preservation. And this tells you why wetlands are important. If countries are coming together, even transnational, trans-border water bodies covered under Ramsar, well, completely, it's complete cooperation in making sure that the sanctity of that watershed, that particular wetland is maintained. Okay. So the theme for this year was wetland restoration. This has now become outdated. For next year, wetlands and human well-being. This has been taken from the Ramsar website. Good morning, Karishma. Welcome guys, all of you. Thanks for joining. Okay. So this is the theme for next year. Now please understand, why are we focusing on wetland restoration for this year? Which means that something has gone drastically wrong. You are restoring something, matlab kahin to kharab kiya hai aapne. So the latest stats say, and again, just listen to it so you'll understand the magnitude of the problem. 35% of wetlands across the globe have either been compromised or lost since 1971. Okay, that's a huge number that you are looking at. If 35% of them are compromised or lost, okay, and primarily why is that happened? Okay, so for example, in India's case, look at the prominent cities. Okay, Mumbai has Mithi River. Okay, Bangalore had Belandur Lake. We'll discuss all these names, but understand for a moment. So the Mithi River in Mumbai, okay, or you had the Belandur Lake in Bengaluru, all right, or the East Kolkata wetlands in Kolkata, the Deepore Bill in Guwahati. These are the major sites, okay. I'm just telling you the interaction, the anthropogenic interaction. The names are, it's mentioned in the slide, so don't worry. What has happened in these places is that because of, say, the increased pressure from urban centers, okay, what you have had is the lake area or the wetland area that has been compromised a lot. In fact, completely compromised. In case of, say, Bengaluru, you have, say, the wetlands on which, say, now it has been leveled and, say, human settlements have come up. Once the rain happens, what happens then? Good morning, Mansu and Tanu. Guys, good morning. Do you realize? Understand this for a second and then you will understand the whole theory here. So, you have, suppose, a particular wetland. Okay. Now, a wetland is essentially a product of its catchment area. Okay. Which means, what is the catchment area? All the water that is there in, say, the locally available ecosystem through rains or lakes or rivers or whatever, water table, all of that supposed to come towards the wetland. Okay. So, it's a product of the area around it. A wetland's whole identity is based on the conservation of the area around it. However, what has happened is that most of the conservation efforts so far, when it comes to wetlands, just talks about this particular area rather than talking about this particular area. So what happens? Eventually, if you have houses here or infrastructure here, you are hindering the flow of water, the natural flow of water and its relationship with that particular water body. Okay. Which is why this is one area you must focus on in your answers. We'll discuss the challenges. This is in fact one of the primary challenges. That our conservation efforts are just focused on the wetland and not on the, say, larger area around the wetland. So this integration is not happening. Okay. So this is the theme, just make a note of this. We'll discuss this in more detail in the coming slides. So let's look at some FAQs from the UPSC Prelims perspective. So wetlands, now you find many names, okay, swamps, peatlands we'll take a special closer look at because questions is pe bahut phaste hai. So swamps, peatlands, sloughs, marshes, all of these are different names, okay, muskegs, bogs, don't worry. You just need to remember three and remember them well. What are the three? The swamps, the marshes and the bogs. If you know these three, the others are just byproducts of these. Okay. So now let's understand. Wetlands exist in many kinds of climates on every continent except Antarctica. Okay. Again, an FAQ asked, important slide from the prelims perspective. As I told you, they are transition zones, which means they are neither totally dryland nor totally underwater. They have characteristics of both. Once they have the characteristics of both, which means that the flora, the fauna, the habitation, everything is, there is a lot of intermingling happening. Okay. Excuse me. Some wetlands are flooded woodlands full of trees. So the major trees that you find, okay, make a note. वैसे तो आपको मिल जाएगा सारा कुछ. So you find, say, oak, you find ferns, okay, you find willow. Most of these trees, hardwood trees, can be found here. At the same time, you are looking at, say, completely halophytic plants, which means plants that love salt, plants that love the marine ecosystem. You find that too. You find plants that are open to brackish water, completely fine. Okay. So all sorts of vegetation can be found. Why? Primarily because, again, it's a transition zone. It's got the best of the both worlds. All right. At the same time, you have watery grasslands also. So there is no particular vegetation. It's a swamp. It's water. Plus it's got some hyacinth or some sort of outgrowth. That is also present. At the same time, you also find that there's something like a thick spongy moss, which is essentially peatlands. You must have heard of this, peatlands. Okay. So what is this essentially? I'll tell you. If you have ever been to a wedding, so this carpet that they put, no, this green color or red color carpet. So suppose if it rains completely, remember how soggy that carpet becomes? You know, it's like when you step on it, you can see the water go out from both sides. Can you guys relate? So peatland is essentially that. It's like a thick carpet that is wet. And where do you find this? In the colder areas. So in Canada, it's famous for peatlands. Okay. So this is again another type of, say, a wetland. Peatland is a type of wetland and this is normally found in the colder areas. Related with that thick carpet that gets wet, no? When you step on it, you can see the water little just like part from the other sides. That's peatland. All right. So let's look at the different types. Now just go through this slide. You will find that these are the whole list that I've given to you. Okay. Entire list is there. We will focus completely on swamps, on marshes, on bogs. Once we understand that, then you will be able to better understand, say, what we are talking of when it comes to, say, conservation of urban wetlands. Alright, so have a look at this slide. Like I told you, wetlands can be either natural or man-made. Freshwater, brackish, saline, तीनों के possibilities है यहाँ पे. Now a swamp. A swamp is a wetland permanently saturated in water. Okay, it will, what you understand the swampy area, no? Swamp is supposed to have a lot of water there. Okay, now you have freshwater swamps and saltwater swamps, both kinds. Freshwater forms on flat land where the water table is so high that it is right at the surface. Okay, around lakes or streams where the water table is high. Runoff is slow, water table is high, which means easy access to water, which means it is at the surface of the earth. Okay, so water tolerant plants, which are called hydrophilic plants. Okay, so hydrophilic plants you will find in swamps. Hydro is water, phil is love. So halophilic loves salt, hydrophilic loves water. So hydrophilic plants you will find here such as duckweed, lily, cattails, royal fern, etc. Okay, you will also find lotus, cypress, all of this. Now, swamps are normally found around the equator, as opposed to, say, marshes. Marshes are not found around the equator. Swamps are found around the equator, which means you are looking at tropical climate. Okay, tropical areas around the equator. Okay, extremely important. I am telling you, today's class, if you were to able to just focus on the individual slides, lots of questions for you. Ash J, thanks Ash J. Oh, we have just gotten started. There's a lot of explanation to come. But thanks, I'm glad you're liking it. Alright. Okay, saltwater swamps. Now, what happens in saltwater? They are bare flats of mud or sand that are thinly covered by seawater. So, it will be a flat area and you will have close proximity to, say, the coastal area, and the water will just come up on the surface. So, constant supply of salt is happening. So, which means it's a saltwater swamp. You also find brackish water, neither fresh water nor saline. Can someone tell me a lake which has brackish water in India? Let's see the chat very quickly. Tell me about a lake in India that has brackish water. Any lake. I'll give you one name, say Pangong Tso. Is Pangong Tso a brackish water lake? Let me know, chat. Okay, and Sundarbans, largest mangrove forests in the world. Again, a saltwater swamp. Now, please understand the difference between the two. Fresh water, you will find deep away from the coastline. Salt water, you will find along the coastline. Near, say, the area from where you can have the interaction with salt water. Okay? Correct. Okay, good. Mandeep is correct. Now, let's look at marshes. Unlike swamps, marshes are south or north of the tropics. 23.5 north के ऊपर, 23.5 south के नीचे. Okay. Now, swamps give way to marshes. Marshes form a flat grassy fringe near river mouths in bays and along coastlines. So, you must have heard of this, the Bay of Fundy. Have you heard of this, guys? The Bay of Fundy. Freshwater, Wooler Lake. Correct, actually it's the largest freshwater lake in fact. Correct. Bay of Fundy का नाम सुना है आप लोगों ने. Why is Bay of Fundy important? Does it have the highest tides, the lowest tides? What's the categorization for Bay of Fundy? Let me know. Alright. So you will find it in these areas where the river mouth is, say, opening into the sea. Alright. And then you have freshwater marshes, often found hundreds of kilometers from the coast. Okay. Such as the prairie region in Northern America. Canada plus USA. Okay. So you will find lots of rivers there. The prairie pothole in fact has large lakes. So they are wetlands. Critical importance in fact. Pangong Tso is freshwater? Yes, correct. Tell me about, say, a lake that has salt water in India. Quickly let me know. बताइए मुझे. Chat should know about this. So saltwater marshes, some of the richest ecosystems, and you find all of these biodiversity in the saltwater marshes. Okay? Now look at bogs. Simple. Swamp, marsh, bogs. Swamp, equator. Marsh, north and south of tropics. Bogs, polar regions plus the colder areas plus Tibetan plateau. All of these places where you are going to find, say, a lot of ice. In those areas, what you find is that cold and Arctic areas, you find bogs. Now what happens? Because of, say, the ice leveling there, the vegetation underneath is trapped. It starts to decay. Eventually what happens? It forms peat, like I told you. That soggy carpet is formed. Okay. So bogs are called moors or fens, the different names, but they have, more importantly, peat, decayed vegetation at the bottom, which forms a spongy mat. Which is why now you will understand peatlands. Canada में है सबसे ज़्यादा. Okay. Are you able to understand peats? Because peats is important. Sambar Lake is correct, Mandeep. Good. Correct. ठीक है. Bay of Fundy observed highest tides. In fact, the highest waves are found there. Correct, Rajan. Good. So make a note of peats, okay? Because you will find many questions on this. Many questions are asked on peats, on peatlands, the location of peats, where are they located, what's the characteristic like. Know about it. बहुत basic है ये. Okay. Now, why are wetlands important? Now that we know what wetlands are, the three types, where are they found, tropics, equator, polar, all of that is given to you. Now, why are they important? Firstly, providers of water-related ecosystem services. Most important, आप समझोगे, the East Kolkata wetlands. Okay, for those of you who have ever been to, say, Calcutta, okay, I can assure you, in the morning you can't miss this. What you find is, again, it's on the fringes of Calcutta, the outskirts of Calcutta. And so what I'll tell you, just know this so that you remember the whole story. In the morning, thousands of vehicles come from these fringe areas, bringing, say, fresh food, and like all sorts of crops are grown there. You find a lot of horticulture going on, fishery going on. All of this harvested, bought on a daily basis to the mandis of Calcutta. The East Kolkata wetlands. What it also provides is all the, say, sewage of Calcutta. Most of the sewage goes to this East Calcutta wetlands, is naturally processed by the water body there. In fact, this sewage also provides the necessary fertilizer for the aforementioned crops and foods and everything. And so what do you find? That here is a water body, a wetland, around a metropolitan city, which is acting as, again, a sewage treatment plant. It is acting as a constant source of locally available food, which means sustainable. You are not using insecticides, pesticides, any of that. It's naturally happening. Do you realize the importance of having such a water body around a particular metropolitan area? At the same time, it is capable of holding excess runoff water, storm water, all of that. Correct? Good, Arka. So you must have seen Arka. East Calcutta wetlands are the best example of how a particular wetland is going to sustain a huge population, and all you need to do is look at the protection of the catchment area. Okay, the catchment area is where the water comes for the wetland to use. Okay, so ecosystem services, you are looking at, say, sewage treatment. Okay, you are looking at groundwater recharge, erosion control, regulation of flood and storm water, all of these provided by the wetland. Remember the East Kolkata wetland example. Okay, productive areas for flora, fauna, humans. Best of both worlds, transition area है, मतलब rich area होगा. In terms of, say, the biodiversity that you can find there, it will be comparable to anything. All right. Major habitat for migratory bird species. So you have, say Kavartal in Bihar. Okay. All of these wetlands, you will find lots of migratory birds come. So again, ecological importance hai. Important source of food. Again, the East Kolkata wetland example. Okay. When you are looking at, say, this stormwater drainage, no, the Deepore Bill example is the best example. Okay. That Guwahati, the city of Guwahati, is in fact making a huge investment, and huge work is going on to make sure that Deepore Bill, this wetland that just exists on the outskirts of Guwahati, shares the same relationship that Calcutta shares with, say, the East Kolkata wetlands. Same thing is happening there. All right. Okay, wetlands, now look at this. They store carbon within their plant communities instead of releasing it in the atmosphere. Understand the climate importance now? So they are going to hold carbon for you. Carbon hold karte hain. What if you start encroaching upon them? The ability of the local system to process carbon locally is completely destroyed. More problems, more susceptible to the local communities. Do you realize? An integral part of a comprehensive local watershed management strategy. This is what is needed. When you talk about a local watershed management strategy, I told if this is the watershed, so unless you are going to go ahead and address this by addressing the areas, the catchment area, only then you are going to be able to do all of this, which is why watershed management is key and critical. Clear? Let's go forward. So now a comprehensive list I have not given. This is again a brief list, but make a note of this. More often than not, in examinations you will find questions such as a wetland name, location, or a wetland name and the water body associated. Okay, or wetland name, is it freshwater or saline or brackish? Okay, so know of these. These are the primary categories that the examination will ask you to identify. Okay, so Calcutta has, like I told you, EKW. Mumbai has Methi River, the mangroves are there. Chennai, they are floodplains. In fact, when Chennai was flooding, one of the key criticisms that came out in 2019, Chennai had flooded. I hope you remember, guys. That time the key criticism that came out was because the watershed management of the Adyar river wasn't done. Large scale encroachment happening on, say, the watershed body. So the whole ability of the watershed to act as a reservoir, a protection against say, flood water, you have compromised it. So when flood happens, everything sinks. Alright. Guwahati, Deeporbil, Karambolim, Goa, Chilka, Odisha, Dal, JNK, Kavartal, Bihar, Koleru, Loktak, Naini, Nalsarobar, Vembanar. Belandur has been in the news for all the wrong reasons, by the way, because this lake caught fire. Okay, go ahead and search. You will find that Belandur caught fire. The lake, in fact, was so toxic. Again, no watershed management strategy. In fact, complete lack of it. So you go ahead and you see that because it was so toxic, it eventually caught fire. The other problem that happens because of, say, extreme pressure on a wetland, extreme pollution happening, is the problem of eutrophication. Are you guys aware of eutrophication? Huh? It's the complete opposite of malnutrition. Malnutrition, you do not have nutrients. Huh? Eutrophication, the lake has so much of nutrient that the oxygen capacity of the lake is compromised. Algal bloom happens. So the whole lake is covered, which means underneath everything is compromised. How and why this wetlands absorb carbon? Well, wetlands are, you know what, Monica, the thing is, wetlands, because they are transition area, and again because they have a lot of biodiversity within themselves. So their ability is to process carbon locally, they act as a local level carbon sinks. But because you are going ahead and encroaching upon them, so this ability of the particular wetland to act as a say, sink to process carbon locally, that is compromised. Which is why it's very important, say, for the local level conservation to take care of the watershed management strategy that we are going to talk about. Okay. So make a note of this and make a note of how eutrophication also affects wetlands. Like I told you, you are completely looking at algal blooms happening, which means the whole lake, too much of nutrients. Malnutrition ka opposite hai eutrophication. Okay. Okay, now let's look at urban wetlands. The East Kolkata wetlands, the world's largest natural resource recycling ecosystem, treating 600 million liters of sewage and wastewater daily. Can you understand the magnitude of it? 600 million liters. If you are to go ahead and make a sewage treatment plant, the amount of capital that will be required to come up with something that has the capacity of treating 600 million liters of sewage. This is being done free of cost by the East Kolkata wetlands. Okay. So EKW's fresh harvest, crucial for Calcutta. Okay. Again, providing livelihood, someone is doing all of that. Similarly, Guwahati's Deeporbil serves as the flood-prone city's natural stormwater drain. Okay. Now, most urban wetlands are under increased threat from these particular reasons. Like I told you, human, first you and I. In fact, it's encroachment. What you find is leveling done on the wetland. Then that land is sold out to, say, some particular property developer who brings up a high rise on that. The first rain that hits the wetland, everything is flooded. Okay. The buyers are cheated. RERA can't do anything because, well, RERA does not have jurisdiction over wetland. Do you realize? Everything is linked. And in fact, you will realize, what you realize is, having too many government bodies, sarkari bodies, when it comes to wetland conservation and management is a primary criticism also. So, for example, in Delhi, the Yamuna floodplains, or when you talk about the wetlands in and around Delhi, okay, the amount of bodies that have jurisdiction over this are too many. It's like too many cooks spoil the broth. From Delhi Jal Board to the Forest Department to the PWD to all sorts of Changu Mangu organizations. So who is going to be the ultimate person to take care of it? The ultimate nodal authority, you know. You can't have too many people and with no subject expertise coming together for watershed management and conservation when they do not have any prior experience. So we'll discuss the Delhi example also. Okay. So increased pressure from population and encroachment, inefficient waste management, eutrophication and damming. Once you go ahead and dam a particular area, there are a lot of siltation that happens. You have changed the character of the wetland. So you shouldn't dam wetlands, you know. Damming also. How does it treat sewage? Bipen, the thing is, all of these wetlands, okay, this is a very good question in fact. So how does it treat sewage? Sewage needs to be, once it goes into these wetlands now, what happens is because of the natural processes inherent within the lake or within the wetland. So most of the fertilizer or the nutrients that are required are recycled. The recycling of nutrient happens within the lake. So you find that some are taken off by the plants. Okay. Now the remaining water, that is again processed. You are also finding that some sorts of animals and fishes consume a lot of this. Eventually what happens? It's the recycling of all the material that is coming in, the input, to make sure that it is used in a part of a food chain, which a wetland does brilliantly because of the biodiversity within the wetland. Okay, are you able to understand? This nutrient recycling happens and it's an inherent part of wetland management, wetland conservation also. Okay, so let's go forward. So the conservation efforts, this again, or everyone is aware of Ramsar Convention 1975, wetlands of importance. India has 75 of them. Okay. Now Montreal Accord is a part of Ramsar Convention, and what happens is, say, whenever a particular wetland or a water body is threatened, okay, that it has suffered some sort of change, then it is put on as on a part of the Montreal Accord. A register of wetland sites where there has been or likely to be adverse ecological changes due to human-made activities. So you had Chilika Lake, that was someone mentioned also. That Chilika Lake was a part of the Montreal Accord, but then because of increased conservational focus by the government as well as by international bodies, it was eventually taken out of it. Okay. So right now you have only two, Keoladeo and Loktak Lake. What is Loktak Lake famous for? Fill this up for me. What is Loktak Lake famous for? Okay. Then you have the Wetland Conservation Management Rules by the Government of India. Prohibits conversion from non-wetland uses. The character of the land should not change or the area should not change. Then you also have a survey that was carried out by the ISRO no less. Okay. The National Wetland Inventory and Assessment, because you ought to know how many wetlands are there throughout the country. So ISRO did it. And then you have the National Plan for Conservation of Aquatic Ecosystem, which has both lakes plus wetlands. Okay. So these are the primary rules that we have. The primary rules that we have. Good, Mandeep. What's the animal that is found there? Which type of deer is found there? Can someone tell me in Loktak Lake? Okay. So what happens now? Look at this. All this is good and fine. No? Looks very nice. But the problem is aplenty. Now let's discuss the problems. Okay. So this is the whole entire plan as to how wetlands have developed in India. Okay. The conservation guidelines in fact. And so some of the important ones that you need to be aware of. So look at this. You know the Amrut scheme that you have heard of, the Atal Mission for Rejuvenation of Urban Transformation, Amrut scheme. Yes. One of the primary criticisms of that is that it talks about, say again, just decorative changes, rather than address a particular water body or a wetland from the angle that we are looking at. Okay. Sambar deer, correct. Fumdis are the correct one, Shivam Singh. Bahut acha answer. Floating islands. Okay, good. So Amrut again, focusing on the decorative changes. Okay. You are looking at, say, the NPCA, the National Plan for Conservation that I told you. Well, again, it is the integrated framework that is required for wetland conservation. That is the focus. That should be the focus. Up until now, what you have seen is that wetlands have been treated in silos. That again, the whole problem of wetland and catchment area, that is not being addressed. All right. So have a look at this slide at your own time. Let's look at the missing links now. Okay, the missing links, this will give you the fodder points for the mains answer. So when the question asks you to go ahead and suggest measures to improve whatever wetlands in India? Include these points, please. So first one, no clear definition of urban lake. Primary problem. What comprises an urban lake? So there is a geographical definition that it has a depth of this much and an area of this much. However, that's inadequate. So there needs to be, again, you can't have a one size fits all definition also. The character of wetlands across India differ, especially say in the stressed urban areas. So a definition ought to be provided. All right. So once you do not have the definition, obviously you will not have a plan. Now the lake management plan encourages partnership between concerned citizens, special interest groups, governments and water resource management practitioners. It identifies the concerns regarding the catchment or the watershed area. So unless you go ahead and address the catchment area, catchment क्या है? जहाँ से पानी को catch किया जा रहा है. If you address the say construction, the illegal construction in the catchment area, the encroachment in the catchment area, the nature of land being changed from say wetland to something else, commercial land ban gaya, agricultural land ban gaya, that ought to be looked at. All right. You are looking at conservation of lakes and wetlands through an integrated and multidisciplinary approach. Right now it is just in silos. Okay. It's this way of functioning. The silo way of functioning is happening say so far as wetland management is concerned. So absolutely wrong. Okay. No authoritative measures taken for formulation of inventory except for the ISRO survey. Nothing else has been done, and that happened in 2018. So many government and state agencies now. Look at this. Too many cooks spoil the broth. Didn't I tell you? Look at this. The Delhi example. There is Delhi Jal Board, the Delhi Urban Shelter Improvement Board, the Forest Department, the ASI, the PWD. How many of them are subject specialists when it comes to urban lake or urban watershed management? Well, one can only say Delhi Jal Board and probably Forest Department. But because there are so many stakeholders, so there is no single point approach. Everyone is working with their own tangent. All right. Department of Water Resource now in the year 2018 had published a census of water bodies. Now again, the problem with this particular census was what? That it failed to account for say the contemporary changes. The number one contemporary changes is that of encroachment. Because of urban pressure of population, so people are going and encroaching on urban wetlands. However, the census did not mention anything about that. The problem also came with nothing said about the lost wetlands. So many wetlands have been lost now. Like the figure I gave you, 35% of wetlands have been lost. So census ought to have given us information there so that probably some sort of rejuvenation strategy could have been implemented. That was not mentioned in the census. All right. See, it fails to account for the urban wetlands that have disappeared due to human activities in the past few decades. So making urban wetlands is viable for pisciculture, fisheries. You are looking at fisheries, you are looking at agriculture, you are looking at migratory birds, tourism, travel, cultural significance. So unless and until, again, it's so many angles now. So you need to address all. If you just address one, something else will become big. बड़ा problem हो जाएगा फिर. So an integrated strategy, which is what I'm talking about. It's not just say the ecosystem services, it's also livelihood, it's also travel and tourism, it's also the carbon, the environmental factor behind it, migratory birds, flora, fauna, species, transition zone, all of that together. So you ought to conserve it, which means an integrated approach is recommended here. Okay. So enhance community-led conservation. Have you heard of this name? He is called, I think, the Pond Man of India. Or the Lake Man of India. I think it's the Pond Man of India. Okay. You had his name that was taken by the Prime Minister in his Mann Ki Baat also. Yes. Ramveer Tawar. So he is again a conservationist who's gone ahead and rejuvenated close to 20 lakes just in and around Noida and Greater Noida. Okay. So what you need is that identification ought to be done by the community, that the community should come first and say, okay, this is a water body or a watershed around our area, and we ought to include it in our daily, thought. So unless and until you include it and be sympathetic to that water, because eventually you are intrinsically linked to that watershed that is around your area. Okay. So this becomes a very important point that you can write in your answer, that community-led management has to be the method forward. You can have 100 of laws, pura enforcement, but if it is not a behavioral change from the community side, it's not going to work out. Okay? All right, so let's look at these questions now. Shivam Singh, yes, he's very famous. Ramveer Tawar is extremely famous, in fact. He's a legend in these parts of the world. Yes, you have these individuals, and so which is why you should pay attention to Mann Ki Baat also. Okay, again, regardless of the ideology that you subscribe to, it's imperative for you to get these current affairs. If you look at the script of Mann Ki Baat, it's released on PIB just the very day. You will see that the issues that are talked about, there are so many fodder points that you can include. So an aware student ought to at least look at it. Give it 5 minutes. It's not going to take you a lot. Okay. Let's look at this question, guys. Now you're going to leave these answers for me. So I have around A, B, C, D, E, 5 questions I have for you. Please leave answers for this in the comment box. Okay, you don't need to answer them right now. I expect you to go back, take 15 minutes, go through the whole PDF, the slide again, and then answer these questions, because this is going to be our outcome-based learning. Alright, so number 1, Gujarat has the highest area under wetlands in India. Is it correct or incorrect? We'll discuss this in tomorrow's class. The total geographical area of coastal wetlands is higher than that of the inland wetlands. Correct or incorrect? Alright. There is no specific definition for urban lakes in India. I think this is correct. We just discussed this. Chilka Lake is listed on the Montreux record. Correct or incorrect? Go ahead, have a look, leave an answer for me in the YouTube comment box. Under this video, after the class, go ahead, write your answer in the comment box. The ones who answer correctly, they become my MCQ masters for tomorrow morning's class at 8 AM. Alright. Go ahead, create a small memory for yourself also, more than anything else. Alright. B. बताइए, correctly matched, should be easy. मीठी, बेलंदूर, आद्यार, दीपोर बील, कौन सा कहाँ पे है, ये आप मुझे बताएंगे. C. Bogs are found in areas with cold climate and peat formation. Saltwater marshes contain halophilic plants. Sardar Sarovar Lake is formed by the action of the river Tapi. Identify the correct statements. Go ahead, let me know. This is your question C. And this is your mains question for the day, guys. Most of you have taken to this, and I'm very happy to see the response. Close to around 20 to 30 answers on an average for every question. So I'd request all of you. Firstly, if you did like this whole discussion, if it was informative to you, if you learned about wetlands in India, go ahead and leave me that like, that much elusive like, And for those of you who would like to answer this question, those who are already answering, most of the students that in fact, I've started to know their names now. So you have Swati, you have Deepak, one person who calls themselves Purpose, so many other names. Okay. All of these individuals keep sending me, Ayush also, Aditya, Akshay, all of these names, they keep sending me their answers. Very good. Some of I have seen a visible change in the quality of your answers. It's good. For the rest, please answer this question. Send in your answers, say by this evening, so that I'm able to go through it and get back to you by tomorrow morning or day after, tomorrow afternoon. This is my email ID, bhuvan.jha@studyiq.com. Alright. And the question that I have for you, an urban lake is a reflection of its watershed. Comment. Simple question. Simple question. Okay. That a lake is a reflection of its watershed. What are you going to talk about here? First, go ahead and talk about how India does not have a proper definition for urban lake. Talk about the catchment area, how it is important for the watershed. Then talk about, say, the watershed's ecosystem services that it provides, the importance of the watershed. Then talk about the problems that the watershed is faced with, such as pollution, encroachment, eutrophication, all of that. Eventually, the way forward. Don't worry, Arka. See, I am telling you, I understand. Thoda problem hoga, Arka. Initially, it will be a little difficult. Don't worry. Send in the answer. What I am planning is to send in, say, model answers to all of you. Many of you have asked me for model answers, so I am thinking we'll do that, so that you get a fair idea of how to write. Okay. So I am hoping to start from this question only. Okay. I'll introduce a model answer. I'll put that up in the Telegram channel. Would that be okay? Would that be something you guys will be interested in, to look at model answers? बताइए मुझे chat पे जल्दी से. Because that will help you, so that you understand how it's to be written. Obviously, I am no expert, but I can give you whatever guidance I have, whatever information that I have. Okay, I don't claim to be the ultimate authority. I'll give you my version of the answer. See if you like it. What can you include from there in your particular answer? All right. So we'll do that. If that's what the class wants, we can do that. ठीक है. So इसका आंसर भेजिए प्लीज मुझे. An urban lake is a reflection of its watershed. All right. That brings the first topic, watershed management, to a close. We had the evening batch that closed its admissions. I met most of the students online who have signed up. It's a good, vibrant batch, lots of positive vibe. I'm happy to see that. Now what is happening is, ठीक है guys, if you guys, हाँ ठीक है, Monica, Rajan, Bipen, Arka, Shivam, Mandeep, Asha, done. I will provide model answers so that it is easier for you to at least grasp कैसे लिखना चाहिए था. Done. Since you have told me, हो जाएगा अब तो. Okay, so the optional batches, in fact, are closing admissions. 26th is when we close admissions for this. And what is the best part about this, guys? You get optional, plus you get test series. Classes beginning from the 31st of this month. Okay, go ahead, look at the course brochure. I am telling you this because optional should not be neglected. Now is the time, in fact, say from July up until December, when you should focus on the optionals. क्योंकि अगले साल तो टाइम मिलेगा नहीं आपको. प्रीलिम्स का पेपर आपने देखा है इस साल कैसा था. Yeah, it gives people nightmares even now. So which means next year, say from Feb, March, you ought to be looking at completely on prelims. Which means you do not have time up until prelims. After prelims till means, इतने सारे GS के पेपर है, ethics है, ये वो, उसमें optional कैसे पढ़ेंगे आप? Which means optional needs to be done now. From now up until December, at least 70% of paper 1, around 40-50% of paper 2. If you have done that, only then consider yourself prepared for next year prelims. I'm telling you right now, the crude truth. If your optional is unprepared, in spite of the fact that you will clear prelims, your mains will not be prepared. ठीक है? So go ahead, take a call on, firstly, decide your optional. And don't decide your optional because your roommate told you or your library friend told you or your bhaiya bhabhi told you. Don't do that. Okay? Look at the syllabus. It should be your decision because I'll tell you what, an optional is like a marriage. Okay? You can't break that marriage after 2 months. It doesn't work. And if you break that marriage after 2 months, you have compromised 1 year. So be very, very judicious in choosing your optional, guys. Don't go by the market sentiment or this or that. Look at it, take an informed decision yourself based on, say, availability of books, availability of material, your interest in the topic. Forget conversion rate. लोग संस्कृत और हिंदी से भी होते हैं. Forget all of that. Focus on whether you will be interested in studying that topic intensively up until, say, the next 18 months. If you say yes to that question, only then go ahead and choose that optional. Okay. And once you decide to sign up, use the code BALIVE. Okay. You get a good discount. Plus, I become a part of your purpose. I am with the geography optional. So you will see a lot of me there. All right. So go ahead. Do this ASAP. All right. Zombie fires now. Let's look at zombie fires. Shivam Singh has a question. Sir, for next year, I think I have to focus mainly on CSAT. Is it favorable for me? CSAT has to be focused, Shivam. CSAT के बगैर तो कुछ हो नहीं सकता. This year has told us one thing, that CSAT ought to be 50% of your preparation. So, but then the right time. See, the thing is, you should know when to begin, so that you can carry forward that knowledge. Na? If you study CSAT right now, CSAT can be done in, say, 45, 50, 60 days. Aram se. The English plus the basics of the maths. After that, it is practice. Concepts will be introduced to you. After that, it is practice. Okay? But please understand this now. If you study CSAT right now, you finish by, say, September end, October end. After that, you have got a time period of 6 to 7 months up until your prelims, which means you will need to go back to CSAT before the examination once, which means duplication of effort. So I would not ideally suggest someone to start CSAT right now. Right now is a good time to focus on the core subjects, start on your optional, start on the static subjects. Make yourself completely updated with these topical approach. You know, if you have topics covered, you will be a lot more comfortable. Confidence उससे आता है. Daily newspaper पढ़ने से confidence नहीं आता है. Newspaper पढ़ के analyze करके आंसर निकालने और सवाल बनाने में confidence आता है. वो एक लंबा process है. Sir, which subject covers more in the long run, PSIR or public administration? See, Lekam, I'll tell you something. You have to define what covers more. What does that mean? In terms of, say, syllabus or usage. Okay. So, because again, usage after examination, once your name comes in the rank list, none of it matters. After that, it's completely practical approach is completely different from what we study. Okay. But from the examination perspective, my only solution for this answer is look at the syllabus. Syllabus dekhiye. All right. And CSAT, for those of you who are struggling, I suggest start with maths. Daily आधे घंटे 1 घंटे बनाओ ना बस maths. But not more than that. Don't make it like a primary part of your preparation. Solve maths when you get tired of reading history, geography, all of that. Use it like a refresher to calm your mind. You know, if you study only CSAT and then बाद में 1 घंटा लक्ष्मीकांत पढ़ा या geography का NCERT पढ़ा, then it is wrong strategy, guys. Maths right now should be a filler, but will become primary later. पहले syllabus देखिए लेकिन. Look at the syllabus. That has to be completely your decision. Okay. Don't worry about the long run. Focus on your interest in the topic. It's like a marriage, guys. If you do not have interest in your partner, it will not work out. I'm telling you. वो public, वो parental pressure, friend pressure कितना दिन तक थाम लेगा? Eventually, you need to have interest in your partner. Same thing. You need to have interest in your syllabus. Okay. All right. Let's look at zombie fires now. So, zombie fires. Firstly, fire that is happening underground. Okay. Normally, you have forest fires that happen overground. In zombie fires, it is happening underground. Okay. Wildfires not only affect trees and grasses, but they move into the ground. That is the only part here, that it is an underground fire. Okay. Now, problems associated straight away you can understand. If it is only in these areas, the colder regions, okay. The colder regions is where you are finding permafrost, where it is, say, zombie fire is more susceptible to happen. Straight away, what do you realize? Ecological problem बहुत बड़ा है. It cannot be controlled. How are you going to control a fire that is under the soil of the earth, under the crust and in the crust? It's impossible to do that. Okay. So, underground fires sustain a season and reignite when there is an increase in temperature. So, they are constantly burning. They are constantly there. They just dim their intensity for some time. But once the atmosphere, once the conditions are conducive again, they flare up again. That is a zombie fire. Okay. For instance, in carbon-rich peatlands of Canada, my dear students, we just discussed peatlands. That soggy mat. So, in carbon-rich peatlands of Canada, what happens? You are looking at fire that rages dozens of feet in the ground, which means that the permafrost that is present in these high areas, in say the Arctic areas, what happens there? The permafrost melts. The carbon is released into the atmosphere. More of such pollution happening. In addition to the pollution of the raging forest fire also, the underground fire. Okay. You are looking at ground instability, permafrost getting threatened, large amount of volume of smoke being billowed into the atmosphere. That is a zombie fire. Please understand, it's a continuous type of underground fire. Okay, it's not seasonal. It is there, always burning, and its intensity only rages when the conditions are perfect for it. Okay. So, let's look at this question now. Go ahead. Permafrost should be a complete focus area for you, especially when you're discussing climate change. No discussion on climate change can be complete without discussing about permafrost. Okay, so does permafrost exist only in the northern hemisphere? You will tell me. All right. Do you think it happens only in the northern hemisphere? Tibetan Plateau contains permafrost. Thawing of permafrost can help combat climate change. Identify the incorrect statements. Leave an answer for this also in the comment box. Please do that. Do not forget. All right. Okay. With that, my dear students, 2 topics is what we have started this week with. Watershed management, watersheds and zombie fires. All right. Go ahead and take a look at the article. The article is in Down to Earth. You'll also find the same article in science.com. Okay. Many, in fact, National Geographic also has come out with a whole explainer on wetlands of India, the urban wetlands, the problems of urban wetlands, the urban lakes. Read most of them. It will give you a very good understanding of this topic. And since environment is a key topic for UPSC, okay, you ought to be completely in sync with the environment news that is going on. Do not leave environment. Okay. Now coming to the last part of this lecture, the last 2 minutes. So I will need your attention. I had put up a poll on my Telegram channel asking, in fact, requesting my students to go ahead and let me know which subject, because I am going to start a new subject. New series is starting on StudyIQ IAS. So I had asked my dear students on my Telegram channel what is the subject that they would like to learn. The options were IR, Geography, Environment and CSAT English. Just by a barest of margin, CSAT English is in the lead, but I will not start CSAT English right now. Okay. What I would suggest is that CSAT will follow second in this endeavor of ours. We will begin with environment and climate change. Primarily for the reason because prelims, you will have to face at least, you're looking at around 20 to 30 questions of environment, forest and climate change. Close to 1/3, roughly around 20 से 25-30%. ठीक है, Arka, I'll tell you, listen out, hear me out, and then let me know if you resonate with me first. So the CSAT is what we'll do is, say if we begin from say July the 31st, I intend on finishing the entire environment end to end, everything, okay, so that you don't have to go ahead and read anything else. I am looking to do that in say around 60 to 65 days, which means August, September end. October the 1st is when I want to start CSAT. So that you are able to complete it in say the next 30 to 45 days. Your 2 subjects are done with me. Set. Okay. Geography या जो भी आप पढ़ रहे हो, in addition to just 1 hour in the morning you give me for the daily current affairs, the topical approach that we have chosen, and give me another 45 minutes for the environment ecology lecture. Okay. On say September the 1st, we begin with CSAT and we do the entire range of CSAT reading comprehension, everything. The rules that are there, everything, so that CSAT English to आप ऐसे solve करोगे. You know, there are people who will solve more than 150, 160 in CSAT. Why? What are they doing differently? Because, again, not this year. This year I'm not talking about this year. उसमें तो कोई नहीं ला सकता. ठीक, I'm talking about until previous year. Why are people able to solve very good? Because they have focused on one area completely. ठीक है, तो Arka, just bear with me. We'll start CSAT soon. So that is it. The timing. What time should we have the class? Again, the Telegram channel will tell me. I'll put up a poll. Go ahead and let me know what time suits your convenience, so that we have more and more people come. Yes, Monica Thakur, completely free of cost, this course coming to you. Okay, completely free of course cost on this particular channel. You don't have to pay anything. All you have to do is like the stream for me. That is your Guru Dakshina. All right. So go ahead. Let me know what timing will be convenient for you, because I would like all of you to be live. ठीक है, वो रिकॉर्डेड नहीं करेंगे, वो लाइव ही करेंगे, तो मुझे आप बताएंगे what time would be better. ठीक है. All right guys, let me know. I'll put up the poll on my Telegram channel, so I hope all of you would consider answering there. Okay, that will eventually decide what time the class starts, because वो आपके है, आप ही करोगे, पूरा डेमोक्रेटिक है यहाँ पे. ठीक है. All right, I shall see you tomorrow morning. All right, with another edition of the Editorial Edge. Please do consider leaving me a like if you learned something in this class. All right. Lekam, sir, it would be substituting the series? No, Lekam. The daily morning analysis, the editorial edge will continue up until your prelims. That much I can assure you. This is in addition to the daily morning, because an evening in 9 p.m. I was doing another current affairs, but then I thought it's better that we take a subject analysis now. So let's start with environment. But then I don't want to do it in the evening because there's too much of time gap. तो मुझे time बताइएगा आप. ठीक है. Early, normally I would like to do in the morning only, around 9:30, 10, whichever time suits you. ठीक है, विल डू दैट. मुझे बताइएगा आप अपने मेरे टेलीग्राम चैनल पे. ऑलराइट, थैंक यू एवरीवन, हैव अ वंडरफुल डे, हैव अ प्रोडक्टिव डे. प्लीज डू आंसर द MCQs in the comment box, and I shall see you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. in the Tuesday edition of Editorial Edge. Thank you so much guys for joining. Bye.